At dinner, my sister called me a loser, then demanded I buy her a new house and a car. When I said no, my parents called me selfish, tried to ruin my job and credit, broke into my apartment, until I documented everything and watched a judge finally end their scheme. Hey, Reddit! My family treated me like a walking wallet for my sister, and I kept the peace way too long. Then one night they pushed way past the line. Before everything completely blew up, and trust me, it did, let me take you back to where this whole mess started. I was 26 when my family finally put my value in writing. Not a feeling, not a suspicion. A number. Printed, folded, and slid across the dinner table like it was normal. The cracks had always been there. Gerald looking through me, Diane smiling through tension instead of stopping it, Nora taking every favor like it was owed. I just never stared too long, because I knew what I'd see if I did. It was Mom's birthday. Low-key by her standards. Home-cooked dinner, grocery store cake, everyone packed around the table. Me, Gerald, Nora, Diane, Grandpa Walt and Gerald's side of the family. Phil, Judy, Loretta, and Greg, who laughed like showing up was a favor. I worked as a county property appraiser, 4 years in. Steady, quiet work. I had my own place, my own car, paid off years ago. I'd been handling my life since I was 19. Nora wasn't. 23, part-time stylist, inconsistent money. And the part nobody said out loud, I'd been covering half her rent for over a year. Gerald and Diane knew it. They just never acknowledged it. Dinner started normal. Chicken, small talk, forced warmth. Walt sat at the end like always. Quiet, watchful. Gerald ran the table. Nora sat beside him, glowing. About halfway through the meal, Nora slid a small wrapped box across the table toward me with this grin on her face. Got you something, Jay. Not my birthday. Wasn't expecting anything. But everyone was watching, so I unwrapped it. It was a novelty mug. White ceramic, big black letters across the front. World's best at TM. The table laughed. Aunt Judy covered her mouth. Phil chuckled. Even my mom cracked a smile. The kind that says I know this landed wrong, but laughing is easier than saying something about it. Greg laughed the longest. Not a polite laugh. The kind that keeps going a beat past where it should stop. The kind that tells you the person isn't embarrassed about finding it funny. He was enjoying it. I looked at the mug for about 3 seconds, set it down without touching it again. Hilarious, I said. Flat. Dead. Nobody noticed the shift. Or if they did, nobody said anything about it. That's how it always worked. Don't make waves, don't cause a scene, pretend everything's fine. 10 minutes later, Nora dropped the real bomb. Casual, conversational. Said she was thinking about getting a new car. Something reliable. Maybe a little nicer than what she had now. Gerald nodded before she finished the sentence. You deserve it, Nora. You work hard. She works about 12 hours a week, but the car wasn't even the main event. Gerald leaned back, reached into his jacket pocket, like he'd been carrying the paper around all night waiting for the right moment, and slid a folded document across the table directly toward me. I picked it up and read it. It was neat, organized. Monthly dollar amounts stretching forward 12 months. A timeline. A breakdown of contributions, and I was the only name on the list. At the bottom, a signature line with my name pre-typed next to it. A family contribution plan. The numbers weren't small. I was supposed to help Nora with a house down payment. Not just contribute, co-sign. Put my actual name on a mortgage, and at the very bottom, in smaller text clearly meant to slip past without being noticed, a line about adding Nora as an authorized user on my credit card to build her credit history. I set the paper down, looked up at Gerald. Nora already toured 3 houses last week, he said, his tone conversational, like this was all settled weeks ago. She told the realtor you'd help make it happen. I turned to Nora. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at her plate. Not embarrassed, not guilty, just waiting. The way you wait for someone to sign something that was already decided. That's when Grandpa Walt cleared his throat. He hadn't said a word all evening, hadn't needed to. But he spoke up now, and the entire table went still. Not because he was loud, because he never did this. I've been sitting here for 20 minutes, Walt said, and this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Gerald shifted in his seat. Dad, this is a family matter. I know it's a family matter. That's why I'm the one saying it. Walt looked around the table slowly, deliberately. Then he fixed his eyes on Gerald. Jay pays half Nora's rent. Has been for over a year. You know that. Diane knows that. And you've been happy letting everyone else believe it was you. Dead silence. That's not a contribution plan, Walt said. That's a shakedown. Aunt Judy opened her mouth, probably to mediate, to smooth everything over, to do the thing she always did when the air got uncomfortable. Walt held up one hand without looking at her. She closed her mouth. Gerald recovered fast. Turned to me with that expression. the one that had been making me feel small since I was a kid. This is exactly your problem, Jay. You've always been cold. This is why people don't warm to you. Nora looked up from her plate for the first time all night. You act like you're a provider, but you don't even provide joy. I looked at the mug sitting next to my plate. World's best ATM. Then I looked at Gerald, then Nora, then back at Gerald. No, I said. One word. But I said it with everything I had behind it. No car, no house, no cosign, no credit card access, nothing. And the rent stops too. Tonight, Gerald's face went dark. The disciplinarian mask, the one that had worked on me every single time since I was a kid. Jay, this is about family. This is about... Then act like it, I said. His jaw tightened. Something shifted behind his eyes. The look of a man reaching for the last card in his hand. You do this, and you're done. No holidays, no family events. You're out. And don't come crawling back later expecting us to pretend this didn't happen. Nobody at the table moved. Nobody said a word. Not Judy, not Phil, not Loretta. The threat hung there in the open, and nobody pushed back on it, which told me everything I needed to know about where they all stood. This is extortion with table manners, I said. The room didn't move, didn't breathe. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, didn't raise my voice, didn't slam anything, didn't wait for anyone to respond. I just walked out the front door while they were still sitting there, forks frozen midair, staring at the space where I'd been. Sat in my car for 2 minutes, hands on the wheel. Then I drove home. The calls started before I got to my apartment. Nora called 17 times that first week. I didn't block her right away. Part of me still thought she might say something real. By the time I understood she wouldn't, the count was already its own message. One late-night message was all vulnerability. I'm scared, Jay. Then 30 seconds later, so just send the money and this all goes away. There it was. The rest of the family got in line behind her. Different voices, same loop. Calm down, be reasonable, don't embarrass us. I blocked every number as fast as they came in. Saved every message before I did. All of it went into a folder on my phone. The online stuff started day 3. Nora posted something deliberately vague. No names, just the kind of line that makes everyone reading it already know who it's about. Finding out who your real family is. Some people only show up when it's easy. The comments filled up fast. Judy first, then other relatives. Then their friends who didn't know a single fact but had an opinion anyway. Within a day, the narrative was locked in. Jay blew up the family over nothing. I screenshotted everything. Every post, every comment, every thread, screenshot, timestamp, filed. The one that actually cut, and I'll be honest, it did, was Loretta, my dad's mom. One voicemail, short, soft, and somehow worse than all the loud ones combined. You were always so difficult, Jay, even as a little boy. That's the kind of line that doesn't accuse you. It rewrites you, takes years of being squeezed, and reframes the whole thing as a personality trait. You're not responding to being exploited. You're just difficult. Always have been. And enough people repeat it enough times, and you start to wonder if they're right. The one person who called and actually said something useful was my Aunt Tanya, my mom's sister. She wasn't tangled up in the chaos the way the others were. She called on day 4, kept it quiet, didn't take sides out loud, but she said one thing that stuck. Jay, I know what it's like to be the one everyone points at. Just be careful and document everything. I'd spent my whole life thinking of Tanya as the quiet aunt who showed up at holidays and didn't make waves. Turns out she'd been through her own version of this years ago, something I only half remembered as a kid. She recognized what was happening before I'd even put words to it, and she was the only person in the entire family who warned me about it instead of pressuring me to back down. I thanked her, meant it completely. What none of them understood, not Greg, not Judy, not any of them, is that being the bigger person was exactly what I'd been doing my entire life. Every time I handed over rent money without being asked. Every time I said yes to something I didn't agree with because saying no would have started a war. Every time I swallowed the humiliation and kept moving because keeping the peace was what the family expected of me. I was done being the bigger person. It hadn't gotten me a single thing. 2 weeks in, the pressure shifted from words to actions. And that's when things got real. Wednesday morning. I was at my desk at the county office halfway through an assessment report when my supervisor Carol called me into her office. No warning, just a short email that said, "Come see me when you get a minute." When I walked in, she looked uncomfortable, not angry. Uncomfortable, the way someone does when they've been handed something awkward and don't know what to do with it yet. "Jay, I got a phone call this morning," she said, "from a man who said he was your father. He identified himself as Gerald, said he was concerned about your mental state, said you'd been acting unstable, and he was worried something might happen at work." The cold feeling in my chest wasn't panic. It was something steadier than that. Something that clicked into place. Did he give you any specifics? I asked. Calm, no edge. Not really, just general concern. He sounded worried. I sat down, kept my expression neutral. Carol was watching me carefully, not because she believed what Gerald had said, but because the call had to be documented. I gave her the short version. Family conflict. Financial demands I'd refused. My dad had a reason to want me discredited. I kept it factual. No emotion, no dramatics. Just the situation, laid out clean. Carol wrote it down. Said my performance file was spotless, and that as long as it stayed that way, there was nothing to worry about. I thanked her and walked back to my desk. Pulled out my phone, logged it, date, time, everything Carol had said. He hadn't called my workplace out of anger. He'd done it strategically. Plant a seed, create a paper trail, make me look unstable before anything else happened. A quiet setup. I was going to make sure that setup didn't stick. The next morning I went in early before anyone else was there and wrote up a short summary of the family situation. Just the relevant facts, nothing emotional, and emailed it to Carol with a request that it be added to my file alongside the note about Gerald's phone call. I wanted it documented, both sides, so that if Gerald ever tried this angle again, there was context on record that told the full story. The notary ambush came about 5 days after that. I got home from work to find a note taped to my front door. Handwritten, surprisingly neat, from Aunt Judy and someone named Don, a guy I'd never met who turned out to be a notary Judy knew from somewhere. The note said they wanted to stop by and talk things through, and that they had some paperwork that could help resolve this quickly. Paperwork, with a notary present. I knew exactly what that was. A loan agreement or some kind of family contract that would lock me into paying for Nora going forward. Something with a signature line and a notary stamp that would make it binding. They showed up 2 hours later. I watched through the peephole. Didn't open the door. Judy knocked 3 times. Waited. Knocked again. Said something about how she was just trying to help everyone move forward. Don stood next to her, holding a manila folder, looking bored out of his mind. 5 minutes. They waited 5 minutes, then left. I'd recorded the whole thing on my phone, held up near the peephole. Judy's voice was clear enough. Archived it. The fact that they showed up with a notary told me everything. They were trying to manufacture a binding obligation. A trap with a signature line and some garbage about helping everyone move forward. Gerald started showing up places around that time. Not following me, nothing that obvious or traceable. Just appearing. The gas station near my apartment. The grocery store I hit on weekends. The parking lot of the hardware store. Standing there scrolling his phone like he just happened to be in the neighborhood. Each time, we'd lock eyes for about 2 seconds. Neither of us said a word. Then, one of us would leave. I started changing everything. Different gas station, different grocery store, varied my route to work, kept my head up every time I walked into a new space. Then, Gerald pulled a move I didn't see coming. About a week after the surveillance started, my building manager called me into his office, said he'd received a written complaint. Someone had filed a formal noise and nuisance report against my unit, claimed I'd been causing disturbances, loud arguments, late-night activity, the whole list. The kind of generic complaint that doesn't require proof, just a signature and a mailing address. I asked who had filed it. He showed me the form. Gerald's handwriting, Gerald's signature. The complaint was fiction, every word of it. But it was on paper now, in the building's records, and that was the point. I took a photo of the complaint form, added it to the case. Then I sat down with my building manager and walked him through the situation. The dinner, the financial demands, the paperwork trap they tried to spring on me, the harassment since then. Kept it calm, kept it factual. He looked at the complaint form and shook his head. I'll note it in the file, he said. But I want your version documented alongside it. 2 complaints in 2 different places. Both fiction, both on record. Gerald was trying to put my life on paper without me. 3 weeks in, my mom called. Jay, please come over. Something's wrong. I don't want to bother you, but I don't know who else to call. My gut said no, but it was my mom. I went. The living room was full when I walked in. Gerald, Nora, Aunt Judy, Uncle Phil, Loretta. Even Greg, leaning against the kitchen doorway with his arms crossed like he was trying to look casual and failing at it. It wasn't an emergency. It was a setup. They had it choreographed. Judy kicked it off, laid out how the family was falling apart, how everyone just wanted things to go back to the way they were, how I was punishing people who love you. Phil nodded along every few sentences. Loretta, from her chair in the corner, said something soft and quiet. You were always so difficult, Jay. I looked around the room, counted every face, noted who was there and who wasn't. Grandpa Walt was not in the room. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice memo app, hit record. Set it face down on the arm of the couch, microphone pointing outward. Go ahead, I said. Keep going. They kept going. For about 20 minutes, they took turns explaining what I owed Nora, what I owed the family, what I owed my parents just for being raised. Judy got emotional. Real tears. The kind that come from genuinely believing your own performance. At one point, she turned to me with this sincere, almost warm expression and said, "You're good at fixing things, Jay. That's your role in this family." "That's the problem," I said. Quiet, flat. She blinked, kept going like I hadn't spoken. Nora sat through the whole thing with her arms crossed, staring at the carpet. I let them finish. Then I picked up my phone, recording still running, and said, "I appreciate the effort. Nothing changes. I'm leaving." Walked out. The drive home was quiet. 20 minutes of people I'd grown up with, listing reasons why I owed someone my money. Not one of them had asked a single question about how I was doing. They'd just come with their list and expected me to fold. Walt called me an hour later, furious, and not at me. "They told me you were coming over to hang out," he said, his voice tight in the way it gets when he's angrier than he's letting show. "They lied to get me out of the house so they could set you up." "Yeah," I said. "They did. That's manipulative. That's a straight-up ambush, Jay." "I know, but now I have it on tape." Walt went quiet for a second. Then, "Good. That gave me something valuable. Someone who'd seen the dinner. Someone they deliberately kept away from the ambush. And someone who was pissed enough to back me up." I installed cameras the next week. 3 small ones. One pointed at my front door from inside, one covering the hallway outside my apartment, and one tucked on a shelf catching the living room and kitchen. Nothing expensive. The kind you pick up at any electronics store. I told nobody about them. The break-in happened on a Thursday evening. I came home from work and the door was unlocked. Not forced, not damaged, just open. Sitting there like someone had used a key, walked in, done what they needed to do, and left. My laptop was gone. A small portable scanner I used for work. And the thing that hit hardest, the thing that made something tighten in my chest in a way none of the other stuff did, my great-grandfather's watch was missing from the dresser. A plain silver watch that had belonged to Walt's father. My great-grandfather? The one I only knew through stories. Walt had put it on my wrist when I was 15 and said, "Keep time for the men who couldn't." Not expensive. Just the last physical thing I had left of him. Gone. But he hadn't taken everything. On the kitchen counter, right in the middle where I'd see it the second I walked in, was the mug. The white ceramic one. World's best ATM. I hadn't displayed it. I'd left it in a drawer after the dinner. Shoved it in the back where I didn't have to look at it. He'd gone looking for it. Found it. Set it out. That wasn't theft. That was a statement. I checked the camera footage before I did anything else. The video was grainy but workable. Hands working the lock with a key. A figure moving through the apartment, loading items into a bag. The face stayed angled away. Whoever did it knew about cameras, or was just being careful. But the build was right. The jacket was right. The way he moved through the space, confident, unhurried, like he knew the layout, that was right too. I called the police, filed a report, gave the officer the footage and the full timeline of everything that had happened since the dinner. He took it all, wrote it down, and said someone would be in touch. That night I sat on my couch with the door locked, new lock installed that same evening, and went through the evidence folder on my phone one more time. Every screenshot, every voicemail, every recording. And then I started thinking about the bank stuff. Gerald had been building paper trails everywhere. The workplace call, the building complaint, the notary visit. All of it designed to create records that painted a certain picture. That pattern made me wonder, what other records existed that I didn't know about? I pulled up every account I could think of. The joint account with Nora, the family savings account I'd been putting money into since I was 16, a handful of others with my name on them from years back that I'd never bothered to check. Every statement showed the same thing. Money moving in directions I'd never authorized. Most of those accounts had been opened when I was a minor, with Gerald listed alongside me. One of those family convenience choices that turns into a weapon later. I'd never cleaned it up because I'd never imagined I needed protection from him. The joint account had about $2,400 in it, all from me. I transferred every cent to my personal account the next morning. Then I closed it. I was building a file, piece by piece, and every single piece was starting to connect. The police took their time, 10 days before a detective called back. When she did, we sat down for 2 hours and went through the footage. She had enough to move forward. A week after that meeting, the detective called again. They'd tracked my laptop through a pawn shop intake log and a serial number. The pawn paperwork gave them enough to bring him in without it being just family drama anymore. Gerald didn't just pawn what he could, he kept the key on him. When they questioned him, they took it, bagged it, logged it, and eventually, They handed it back to me like it was just another piece of property. Some of the stolen stuff surfaced fast. Pawn shop paperwork is boring until it saves you. My laptop and the scanner showed up first. The watch took longer, but it came back too, not because anyone had a conscience, but because paper trails don't care about excuses. I needed to move. My apartment didn't feel safe anymore. Not after the break-in, not after the cameras, not after Gerald showing up everywhere I went. So I applied for a one-bedroom near the county office. Standard stuff. Income verification, employment check, credit pull. They called me back 2 days later. Denied. The woman on the phone said there was a flag on my credit report. Something recent. Didn't match the rest of my history. Told me to pull my own report and look into it. I did. That night. There it was. A title loan. Opened 6 months ago. Attached to my vehicle. $4,800. My name, my social security number, my signature, none of which I had provided. The title had been at Diane's house for years. Safe, in the family file cabinet. I'd never thought to take it back because I'd never thought I needed to protect myself from my own father. Gerald had opened this before the dinner. Before any of this blew up, it had been sitting on my report for months, quietly doing damage I didn't know about. And it wasn't just open, it was behind, late enough to throw a shadow across everything I tried to do next. I wanted to put my fist through the table. Sat there for about 10 seconds with my jaw clenched. Then I started logging. Date, amount, account details, everything. I didn't punch anything. I documented everything. That was the night it stopped being a family argument in my head. This was fraud. This was identity theft. This was criminal, and it was provable. And I was going to make sure someone with the authority to care about it knew exactly what had happened. I found a lawyer, a guy named Alan. Solid reputation, handled civil cases, didn't waste your time. I sat in his office a few days later and laid everything out. Every document, every recording, every bank record, the credit report with the fraudulent title loan right there in black and white, every screenshot. Alan went through it all without interrupting, asked a few sharp questions at the end. He laid out the strategy, 2 tracks running simultaneously. First track, criminal complaints, fraud, identity theft. The title loan was the clearest piece, $4,800 extracted using my identity, my forged signature, and my social security number. Alan got copies of the original loan paperwork directly from the lender. The signature was close, good enough to fool a clerk on a busy afternoon, but it wasn't mine. And the social security number had been pulled from old documents Gerald had kept from my childhood. That was a crime. Second track, civil lawsuit. Everything Gerald had taken from me, documented and priced. The forged title loan, the joint account drain, the family savings account, one I'd been contributing to since I was 16, which I'd discovered he'd been pulling from for years. When I finally checked the balance, it was down to $6,200. I withdrew it all, closed the account. The total damage across every account and every form of financial manipulation added up to more than $13,000. Alan also recommended cease and desist letters immediately, one to Gerald, one to Judy, formal, on letterhead. The kind of document that tells people the rules have changed. I paid Alan's retainer that same week, $3,500. It hurt. That was money I'd been building carefully for months. I picked up freelance appraisal work on weekends to cover the gap, inspections for private sales, the kind of jobs that paid decent, but took up hours I didn't have. I didn't complain about it. Not once. This was what it cost to fight back properly. I was willing to pay every cent of it. The cease and desist letters went out within a week, and instead of backing off, Gerald's side doubled down. He had a lawyer, too. That fact alone told me he'd been preparing for this longer than I thought. You don't retain legal representation the moment someone says no at a dinner table. This had been anticipated. His lawyer sent a response letter claiming implied consent. The argument was that because I'd been supporting Nora financially for over a year, I had established a pattern that she was legally entitled to continue relying on. It was a stretch, Alan said as much plainly, but it was enough to buy time. The stalling got worse after that. Missing documents, requests for continuances, confusion about dates. Every time Alan pushed, Gerald's lawyer found a way to buy another week. It was a grind. Slow, frustrating, expensive. Alan warned me early and clearly. One moment of lost composure. In court, on record, anywhere official. And they would use it to paint me as unstable and emotional. That was the play Gerald's lawyer was banking on. Get me to react, then point to it and say, look, this is who he really is. I didn't give them that. When I was on record, I referred to Gerald as Sir, not out of respect, out of distance. It was a signal, deliberate, cold, and unmistakable. This wasn't a father-son argument anymore. It was a legal matter. and I was going to treat it exactly like one. Say it again, slower, I told Gerald during one recorded phone call he'd initiated, one where he'd started demanding I stop this whole circus and come back to the family. I want the recording clean. He hung up without another word. The recording was crystal clear. The hearing was on a gray Tuesday in late autumn. I wore a plain dark suit, no tie, sat next to Alan on one side of the room. Gerald was on the other side with his lawyer. Nora was off to the side in the gallery. She looked smaller than I remembered, quieter. I didn't look at her for long. Then Grandpa Walt took the stand. 74 years old, button-up shirt, his good jacket, sitting up straight like he'd been waiting for this. When the judge asked him to describe his relationship to the parties, he said it plainly. I'm Diane's father, and I'm Jay's grandfather. He was asked to describe what he witnessed at the birthday dinner, and he did. Slow, thorough, every detail, the gag gift, the contribution plan, the way Gerald had presented the whole thing like it was already decided, the way Nora had mentioned a realtor before Gerald even brought up the house. Then the judge asked about the financial support, whether Walt had direct knowledge that Jay had been paying Nora's rent. I found out that night, Walt said. Gerald had let everyone in the family believe he was the one covering it. He wasn't. Jay was. Had been for over a year. He paused, looked across the room at Gerald. I should have asked sooner. That one's on me. Gerald's lawyer tried to cross-examine, asked whether Walt was just going on what Jay had told him, or whether he had independent knowledge. Walt looked at her with an expression that could have frozen the room. Ma'am, Jay printed the statements and handed them to me the week after that dinner. His name is on every single deposit. Gerald's name isn't on one. Silence. Gerald's lawyer shifted in her seat. Gerald himself stared at the table in front of him. Alan waited. Let it hang there. Made sure the judge felt every second of it before he moved on. The turning point arrived during Gerald's own testimony. He'd been solid up to that point. Measured. Reasonable. Playing the role of the concerned father who just wanted to help his daughter succeed. His lawyer had prepped him well. He spoke in calm sentences and used words like responsibility and family unity. He sounded credible to anyone who didn't know better. Then Alan stood up. The first few questions were easy, just establishing basic facts, getting Gerald comfortable. Then Alan pulled out a printed copy of a text message thread. Gerald to Judy. Obtained through discovery. Can you read this message for the court? Alan said. The one dated 3 days before the birthday dinner. Gerald read it. His jaw tightened. The first crack. The message said, we all agreed he'll calm down and pay later. Just keep the pressure on. The room went quiet. Not a gasp. Not anything dramatic. Just dead air. The kind that lands when someone says something true in a place where lies don't work anymore. Gerald tried to spin it. Said it was out of context. Said we didn't mean what it sounded like. His lawyer objected. Alan had 3 more messages in the same thread, each one tightening the same picture. The out-of-context defense started looking thinner with everyone. And that's when Aunt Judy, sitting in the gallery, cracked it wide open. She'd testified earlier that morning, briefly, about the notary visit. She'd been vague and evasive, the way people get when they know they're standing on thin ice. But when the message thread came up during Gerald's cross-examination, she blurted out, loud enough for the court reporter to catch every word, we didn't think he'd actually go this far. Every head in the room turned. The judge's head snapped up. Miss Judy, he said, sharp as a gavel, you are not testifying right now. One more outburst, and you will be removed from this courtroom. Judy sank back like the air had been punched out of her. Alan didn't flinch, didn't react, just let it sit there. Let the judge hear it. Let it do its damage on its own. The rest of the hearing moved faster after that. I sat through all of it the way Alan had coached me. No fidgeting, no expression that could be read as anything other than calm. When I spoke in short sentences. Dates, amounts, facts, no editorializing. When Gerald's lawyer tried to frame me as someone who had chosen conflict over family, I looked at her and said, we can discuss feelings after we discuss felonies. Alan actually smiled at that one. The judge did not. Tanya testified briefly that afternoon too. Not about the dinner or the money, about the pattern. She described her own experience years ago, the way the family had turned on her for setting a boundary. It gave the judge context, showed that what happened to me wasn't a one-time thing. It was how this family worked. The verdict came down 2 weeks later, in writing. I read it at Alan's office, sitting in the same chair where I'd first laid out the whole mess months earlier. A civil judgment for the full documented amount, a protective order, and a written finding that the fraud and identity theft claims were supported by evidence, enough that the criminal complaints stopped being family stuff and started being a file with teeth. Not a prison sentence. Not a dramatic collapse in front of a courtroom full of strangers, but it was permanent. It was documented, and it was real. It was also, for the first time in this whole thing, the truth. On the record, where it couldn't be rewritten or minimized, things didn't blow up overnight. They came in slow, steady, over weeks and months. But every single one landed. Gerald's landscaping business, the small lawn care company he'd built over 15 years, quietly folded about 6 weeks after the verdict. Word of mouth in a small town. A handful of clients saw the court records and stopped calling. Gerald lost the thing he valued most, the appearance of being a man who had his life under control. Aunt Judy went quiet after the verdict. The kind of quiet that means the game is over and everyone knows it. Phil sent one text. "I hope this works out for everyone," which was about as much emotional investment as Phil had ever shown about anything. Greg disappeared. Loretta never acknowledged any of it happened. Nora was the one I paid closest attention to. She tried to reach me at first. I blocked everything. 2 months later, Tanya told me Nora had gotten her own lease, salon work, plus a second shift at a dry cleaner. For the first time in her adult life, she was figuring it out. 23 years of being told you're the golden child doesn't make you strong. It makes you brittle. Tanya became something real after that. Not dramatic, just consistent. A text every couple of weeks, a check-in on my birthday. She'd been through her own version of this years ago. She understood what it cost. 3 months after the verdict, I went to my mom's place. Not to reconcile, not to make peace. There was a box of old stuff at Diane's house I needed back. Photos, documents from when I was a kid, things I wanted before I closed out that address entirely. Diane opened the door when I knocked. She looked tired. Like something inside her had finally stopped running. She stepped aside to let me in. Didn't say anything. I grabbed the box from the hallway closet. Took about 3 minutes. When I turned to leave, she was standing in the kitchen doorway. "Jay," she said. I stopped. Didn't turn all the way around. "I know it doesn't change anything." Her voice was steady. "I chose peace over you, for years. And I told myself it was the right thing to do because it was easier. It wasn't the right thing." I stood there for a second. Let that settle. "Yeah," I said. "It wasn't." She didn't cry or ask for forgiveness. She didn't dress it up into something smaller. She just nodded once and stared at the floor. I left. About a week later, on a Saturday morning, I wrote 2 words on a plain sheet of paper and slid it into an envelope with the spare key the police had returned to me. I didn't take it to Gerald. I took it to Alan's office and left it with the receptionist, letting it move through official hands like everything else had. Alan mailed it certified. The note said, "No access." An hour later, my phone buzzed from an unknown number. "You think you're better than all of us now." I stared at it, then sent back, "You don't miss me. You miss access." Then I blocked the number. The old photos were still spread across my table. I pushed them aside and opened the small evidence bag from the pawn shop recovery. The watch dropped into my palm. My great-grandfather's, the one Walt put on my wrist when I was 15. I held it for a long moment, then strapped it on where it belonged. Once the protective order was filed and the payments cleared, I changed everything. Address, routines, number. Quietly. Like closing a door that doesn't need to be slammed. Outside, the city kept moving. And for the first time in 26 years, nobody else had a key to my life. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. At 16, I came home to find my stuff thrown in the basement and my sister and her boyfriend already set up in my room. When I confronted my parents, my dad snapped, "You'll sleep down there and still pay rent. Your sister deserves that room more than you do." That night, I called my grandpa. So I'm 16 years old and I just came home from my after-school shift at the grocery store to find all my stuff dumped in the basement like garbage. Not carefully moved, not packed with any kind of consideration, just straight up thrown down there in random boxes and trash bags like I was being evicted from a crack house. My sister Ashley and her deadbeat boyfriend were already set up in my room. They had their stuff everywhere. His gaming setup was on my desk. Her makeup crap was all over my dresser. They were literally unpacking like they'd just closed on their first house or something. And when I stood there in the doorway trying to process what I was seeing, Ashley didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. She just goes, "Oh, hey, Mom and Dad said we could have this room since it's bigger. Your stuff's in the basement." Just like that. Like she was telling me the weather forecast. I'm not gonna lie. I just stood there for a solid 10 seconds trying to figure out if this was some kind of prank. Like maybe I'd walk downstairs and find my actual room set up somewhere else. Or my parents would jump out and yell surprise. But nope, this was real life. My childhood bedroom that I'd had since I was 7 years old was just gone. Handed over to my 22-year-old sister and her unemployed boyfriend like I didn't even exist. I went downstairs to find my parents watching TV in the living room. Both of them knew I was home. Both of them heard me come in. Neither one bothered to give me a heads up about the whole room situation. My mom didn't even look up from her show when I walked in. My dad glanced over with this expression that told me he knew exactly what I was about to say, and he was already annoyed about it. I asked them what was going on with my room. Tried to keep my voice calm and reasonable. Asked why all my stuff was in the basement and why Ashley and her boyfriend were moving into my space. My dad didn't even mute the TV. He just turned his head slightly and said, "Your sister needs that room. She and Jordan are saving up for their own place and they need more space than the guest room. You'll sleep in the basement for now." For now. Like this was temporary. Like they were doing me some kind of favor by letting me stay in my own house. I pointed out that the basement wasn't even finished. It had concrete floors, exposed pipes, and it got cold as heck down there in the winter. The only bedroom was this tiny area behind the furnace that was basically a storage closet with a small window. My dad's response? Then you better dress warm, and you're still paying rent. $300 a month, same as before. Let me back up and explain that part because it's important. I'd been paying my parents $300 a month since I turned 16 and got my job at Fletcher's Grocery. They told me it was to teach me responsibility and prepare me for the real world. Never mind that my sister had lived at home rent-free until she was 21 and only moved out because she got her own apartment with her ex-boyfriend. When that relationship crashed and burned 6 months ago, she moved back home, also rent-free. I'd been working 25 hours a week while maintaining a 3.9 GPA because my parents said if my grades dropped below a 3.5, I'd lose my phone and internet privileges. Ashley barely graduated high school with a 2.1, and nobody said a word. She went to community college for 1 semester, failed 3 out of 4 classes, and dropped out. My parents' reaction was, college isn't for everyone, and they let her move back home with zero expectations. But sure, I was the one who needed to learn responsibility. So there I was, standing in my living room, being told I was getting demoted to the basement while still paying the same rent. I asked my dad if that seemed fair to him. He looked at me like I'd just asked the dumbest question in human history and said, "Life's not fair. Your sister deserves that room more than you do. She's older, and she's been through a lot. Been through a lot. Ashley's been through a lot. The girl who's never held a job for more than 3 months, who got fired from a coffee shop for showing up late every single day, who borrowed $2,000 from our parents last year and never paid back a cent. That Ashley had been through a lot and therefore deserved my room." I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, "Okay," and went down to the basement to see what I was working with. My mom called after me something about appreciating what you have, but I was already down the stairs. The basement was worse than I remembered. They dumped my stuff in the middle of the floor in no particular order. My clothes were mixed with my books, my gaming stuff was tangled up with my bedding, and my actual bed frame was just leaning against the wall in pieces. No mattress. Turns out they'd left my mattress in my old room for Ashley and Jordan. I was apparently supposed to sleep on the ancient futon that had been down there since 2015, the one with springs poking through the cushions and mysterious stains that nobody wanted to discuss. I spent that evening organizing my stuff in silence, put my clothes in the old dresser that smelled like mildew, set up my desk in the corner, near the one outlet that actually worked. Tried to make that futon semi-comfortable with every blanket I owned. The whole time I could hear Ashley and Jordan upstairs laughing and playing music in my room. In my actual room where I'd done my homework for 9 years. Where I'd learned to play guitar. Where I'd stayed up late reading books with a flashlight under the covers when I was supposed to be sleeping. That night I barely slept. The basement got down to about 55 degrees, and the futon felt like sleeping on a pile of broken dreams. I could hear the furnace kicking on every 20 minutes, and the sound of Ashley and Jordan walking around above me. Around 2 in the morning, I heard them going at it, and I literally had to put my headphones in and blast music to drown it out. When I woke up at 6 for school the next morning, I was stiff, cold, and pissed. I went upstairs to take a shower and found Jordan in the bathroom. He'd been in there for 30 minutes doing his hair or whatever. When he finally came out, I had exactly 8 minutes to shower and get ready before I had to catch my bus. I made it work, but I was still damp when I left the house. This became my new routine. Wake up freezing in the basement. Race upstairs to fight for bathroom time. Try to grab breakfast while my mom cooked for Ashley and Jordan. Take the bus to school. Go to my after-school job. Come home to the basement. Repeat. Meanwhile, Ashley and Jordan were living like newlyweds in my childhood bedroom, eating food I helped pay for through my rent, using utilities I contributed to, and contributing absolutely nothing to the household. 2 weeks into this arrangement, my dad added a new rule. I wasn't allowed to use the main floor bathroom anymore except for quick trips. I had to use the basement bathroom for showers because Ashley and Jordan need their privacy in the mornings. The basement bathroom was this nightmare cave with exposed pipes and a shower that only had cold water unless you ran it for 15 minutes first. The sink was stained yellow from decades of hard water. The toilet ran constantly. The mirror was cracked down the middle. There was black mold growing in the corners that nobody had bothered to clean in probably 5 years. I didn't complain, didn't argue, just said okay and adapted. Started showering at night instead. Set my alarm earlier so I could get the water warm before school. Bought cleaning supplies with my own money and spent a Saturday scrubbing that bathroom until it was at least sanitary. My parents didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. I was playing the long game here, and I knew that keeping my cool was essential. The food situation got worse too. My mom would cook these big family dinners for Ashley and Jordan. Real meals. Pot roast, lasagna, chicken parmesan, the works. She'd call them down for dinner and they'd all eat together in the dining room while I was still at work. By the time I got home around 9, there'd be nothing left except maybe some rice or a dried out piece of chicken. My mom's excuse was that she didn't know what time I'd be home, so she couldn't save me a plate. Never mind that I worked the same schedule every week and she could have easily set aside food for me. I started eating before my shift. Grabbed sandwiches from the grocery store deli using my employee discount. Kept granola bars and instant noodles in my basement room. Lost about 10 pounds that first month just from not having access to regular meals. My mom commented on it once, said I looked thin. I told her I was fine. She didn't push it. 3 weeks in, Jordan decided he needed to borrow my gaming system because his was broken and he was having a hard time with job interviews. Like playing video games was somehow going to help him land a job. My parents backed him up when I said no. Said I needed to be a team player and help out family. My dad actually gave me this whole speech about how Jordan was going through a tough time and needed support, and I should be more understanding. I pointed out that I'd bought that Xbox with my own money from my actual job. The job I worked 25 hours a week while maintaining honor roll grades. Jordan had never held a job for more than 2 months and spent most of his days sleeping until noon. My dad's response was, "That's not the point. Family helps family." I watched Jordan carry my Xbox upstairs and set it up in my old room. He never brought it back, never even thanked me for it, just acted like it had always been his. When I asked about it a month later, he said he couldn't find it. Probably sold it for cash, but I couldn't prove anything. The breaking point with the bathroom situation came about a month in. I'd gotten up early to shower before school, started running the water to warm it up, and was waiting in my room when Jordan came downstairs and locked himself in the basement bathroom. He was in there for 45 minutes. Taking a shower, doing his hair, whatever. I knocked on the door twice to ask how much longer he'd be. He ignored me. I ended up having to skip my shower entirely and go to school feeling grimy and gross. When I got home that night and mentioned it to my parents, my dad said I should have used the upstairs bathroom. I reminded him that I wasn't allowed to use the upstairs bathroom anymore because Ashley and Jordan needed privacy. He said I should have gotten up earlier then. I'd been up since 5:30. How much earlier was I supposed to wake up? That's when I made the call. See, my grandpa on my mom's side is this quiet guy who doesn't say much, but sees everything. He's been watching this family dynamic for years, and I knew he wasn't a fan of how my parents operated. He'd pulled me aside at Christmas last year and told me if I ever needed anything, really needed anything, I should call him. At the time, I'd thought it was just something adults say, one of those empty offers people make to be polite. But sitting there in my freezing basement bedroom wearing 2 hoodies and thermal pants at 10 p.m. on a school night, I realized he'd meant it. He answered on the second ring. I told him everything. The whole story from start to finish. The room situation, the rent, the double standards, Ashley getting everything while I got nothing, the basement, the cold showers, the stolen Xbox, Jordan using my bathroom, the missing meals, all of it. I didn't embellish, didn't exaggerate, just laid out the facts in the same calm voice I'd been using with my parents for the last month. My voice cracked a few times, but I kept it together. Grandpa listened without interrupting. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, but he didn't say a word until I finished. When I was done, there was this long pause. Maybe 15 seconds of silence. Then he said, "Pack your essentials. I'm picking you up Saturday morning at 8. Don't tell your parents." I asked if he was sure. Told him I didn't want to cause problems between him and my mom. He said the only problem was that his daughter had forgotten how to be a parent, and he wasn't going to watch his grandson suffer because of it. Then he told me to get some sleep and he'd see me Saturday. I barely slept that night. Spent most of it lying on that awful futon thinking about what I was about to do. Part of me felt guilty, like I was abandoning my family or being dramatic. But the bigger part of me felt this weird sense of relief, like I'd been holding my breath underwater for a month, and someone had just thrown me a life preserver. The next few days were surreal. I went through the motions at school and work like normal. Came home to the basement like normal. Acted like everything was fine. My parents didn't notice anything different. Why would they? They barely noticed me anyway. Ashley and Jordan were too wrapped up in their own little world to pay attention. I was just the kid in the basement who paid rent and stayed out of the way. Friday night, I started packing. Did it quietly after everyone was asleep. Took only what mattered. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, my phone charger, important school stuff. Left behind anything I couldn't carry in one backpack. The Xbox was already gone anyway. My guitar had a broken string and I didn't have time to fix it. Most of my books could stay. I'd buy new ones if I needed them. The hardest part was getting my documents. I waited until 2 in the morning when I knew everyone was asleep. Crept upstairs to my parents' office where they kept the file cabinet. Found my folder. Birth certificate, social security card, passport, immunization records, all of it. Took everything that proved I existed as a legal human being. My parents would probably notice eventually, but by then it would be too late. Saturday morning, I was waiting outside at 7:55 with a backpack full of clothes and my important documents. It was cold. Early November in the Midwest. Temperature probably in the low 40s. I could see my breath in the air. I sat on the front steps and waited. Part of me still couldn't believe this was really happening. Grandpa pulled up in his old truck at exactly 8 a.m. Same truck he'd been driving since before I was born. Dark blue Ford F-150 with rust spots on the wheel wells and a dent in the back bumper from when he'd backed into a pole at Home Depot 3 years ago. I'd never been so happy to see a vehicle in my life. I threw my bag in the back and got in. He didn't ask if I was sure, didn't question my decision, didn't give me some speech about family or try to talk me into giving my parents another chance. He just looked at me, nodded once and said, "Seatbelt." Then he put the truck in gear and drove. We didn't talk much during the drive. Grandpa wasn't really a talker anyway. He had the radio on low, some old country station. The heat was blasting. I realized about 10 minutes in that I was actually warm for the first time in a month. Really warm. Not wearing 3 layers and still shivering warm. Just comfortable, normal warm. I almost cried. We stopped at the house he shared with my grandma about 40 minutes away. It was this nice ranch-style place in a quiet neighborhood. They'd lived there since my mom was a kid. I'd been there a million times for holidays and birthdays, but I'd never really looked at it as a potential home. It was just Grandpa and Grandma's house. But pulling into that driveway that morning, seeing the leaves scattered across the lawn, and the porch light still on even though it was daytime, it felt different. It felt like a refuge. Grandma met me at the door before we even got out of the truck. She must have been watching for us. She had this sad smile on her face and pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than usual. Didn't say anything, just held me. Then she stepped back, put her hands on my shoulders, looked me right in the eyes and said, "You're home now. Come on, I made breakfast." The guest room was ready, like she'd been preparing for this. Bed made with fresh sheets, fresh, clean towels folded on the dresser. The closet was empty and ready for my stuff. There was even a desk set up in the corner with a good lamp and a cup full of pens. The whole room smelled like fabric softener and that specific scent that old houses have. It was the nicest bedroom I'd seen in a month. Grandma made pancakes and bacon, real breakfast, hot food, as much as I wanted. She kept refilling my plate without asking if I wanted more. Just watched me eat with this satisfied look on her face. Grandpa sat across from me reading the newspaper, occasionally glancing up to make sure I was okay. Neither of them asked me questions about what happened. They just let me exist in their space without pressure or judgment or expectations. After breakfast, Grandma showed me around. Reminded me where everything was even though I'd been in this house 100 times. Showed me which bathroom was mine. Told me where the extra blankets were if I got cold at night. Said I was welcome to any food in the kitchen whenever I wanted it. Didn't mention rent. Didn't mention chores. Just said, "This is your home now." And left it at that. My parents didn't notice I was gone until Sunday afternoon. I'd worked a closing shift Saturday night, and they probably assumed I was just hiding in the basement like usual. My mom called my phone around 2 p.m. Sunday. I didn't answer. She called 4 more times. Then my dad called. I ignored all of them. Finally, my dad texted, "Where are you? Get home now." I texted back, "I'm at Grandpa's. I don't live with you anymore." My phone immediately started blowing up. Calls, texts, voicemails. My mom was crying about how disrespectful I was being. My dad said I was making a huge mistake. Ashley called me dramatic and selfish. I blocked all of them. Monday morning, Grandpa drove me to school. He'd already handled the enrollment paperwork using his address. Told me I could stay as long as I needed. No rent. No rules except keep my grades up and be respectful. His only requirement was that I keep working and save my money. That evening, my parents showed up. I watched from upstairs as my dad got out of the car and marched to the front door. Grandpa answered before he could knock. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes. Then Grandpa stepped back and shut the door in my dad's face. My parents sat in their car for another 10 minutes before leaving. Later, Grandpa told me my dad had threatened to call the police. Grandpa's response was, "Go ahead. He's 16 with his own income and documentation. You've been charging him rent and housing him in an unfinished basement with no heat. Let's see how that conversation goes." My dad didn't call the police. The next few weeks were weird. I kept expecting my parents to show up or for this whole thing to blow up somehow. But it didn't. Grandpa had called their bluff and they had no moves left. They couldn't report me missing because I wasn't missing. They couldn't force me home because I was paying my own way. They'd backed themselves into a corner by treating me like an adult tenant instead of a minor child. Grandma told me later that she'd had a conversation with my mom. My mom tried the whole, "He's my son and he belongs at home" routine. Grandma shut that down with, "You moved him to a freezing basement and gave his room to his adult sister and her unemployed boyfriend. You charged him rent while giving her free housing. You treated him like a tenant, so he found a better landlord." School became better almost immediately. I wasn't exhausted all the time anymore. I could shower in peace. I had heat. My grades actually improved and I made honor roll that semester. My job situation improved too. I'd been working at Fletcher's Grocery for almost a year. I was good at it. Showed up on time, did my work, didn't complain. My manager liked me, and when I told her I'd moved in with my grandparents and needed more hours, she bumped me up to 30 hours a week. I was making decent money for a 16-year-old and saving almost all of it. About 6 weeks after I moved out, my dad texted me. Just one message. "Your mother wants to talk. Family dinner at the house Sunday at 6. I didn't respond. He texted again the next day. "Are you coming to dinner or not?" I texted back, "No. We need to discuss this situation like adults." "There's nothing to discuss. I don't live there anymore. You're still my son, and you'll show me respect." I didn't respond to that one. My mom tried a different approach. She called my grandma and asked her to talk some sense into me. My grandma told her I was showing perfect sense by removing myself from a toxic situation. My mom hung up. Ashley tried too. Sent me this long text about how I was tearing the family apart and being immature. Said Jordan had moved back home with his parents and she needed help with rent now. Apparently, my parents had started charging her after I left. Karma's funny like that. She actually had the audacity to ask if I could loan her money for her first month. I left her on red. Around month 3, my dad showed up at Fletcher's while I was working. Just walked into the store during my shift and stood there waiting for me to notice him. When I did, he waved me over. I kept stocking shelves. He walked over to me. "We need to talk," he said. "I'm working," I said. "This is important." "So is my job." He got that red face thing happening again. The same look he'd had at Grandpa's door. But he was in public now, and he knew better than to make a scene. He lowered his voice and said, "Your mother is upset. Ashley is struggling. We need you to come home and work this out like a family." I stopped stalking and looked at him. Really looked at him. This was the guy who'd told me life wasn't fair when he kicked me to the basement. Who'd said my sister deserved my room more than I did. Who demanded rent money while I froze my butt off every night and fought for bathroom time every morning. And now he wanted me to come home and work it out because things weren't going according to his plan. "No," I said. "Excuse me? No, I'm not coming home. I'm not working anything out. I'm fine where I am. You're 16 years old. You don't get to make that decision. You made me a tenant when you started charging rent. Tenants can move when they find better housing. I found better housing. That's not how family works." "Yeah, well, I learned about family from you, Dad. You taught me that family is transactional, that it's about who deserves what and who provides the most value. I took those lessons to heart, and I found a better deal." His face went from red to purple. I thought he might actually blow a gasket right there in aisle 7, but he didn't. He just stood there breathing hard for a few seconds, then turned and walked out. My manager came over after he left and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. She said if he came back and bothered me again to let her know, and she'd call the cops. That was the last time my dad tried to talk to me in person. The text continued, though. My mom would send these long guilt trip messages about how much she missed me and how hurt she was that I'd abandoned the family. My dad would send shorter, angrier messages about responsibility and respect. Ashley would pop in occasionally to complain about her life and how unfair it was that she had to pay rent now. I ignored all of it. Blocked them eventually when the messages got to be too much. Life at Grandpa's place was good. Really good. I had my own room with actual heat. I could take hot showers whenever I wanted. Grandma cooked real meals that I didn't have to fight for. Grandpa helped me with my homework sometimes and never once asked me for rent money. They treated me like family. Real family. The kind that actually gives a damn about your well-being. I kept working. Kept saving. Kept. By the time I turned 17, I had almost $8,000 in the bank. My manager promoted me to shift lead, which came with a raise. I started taking online courses for business management. Figured I'd get a head start on college credit. Senior year, I applied to colleges. Got accepted to 3 good schools with partial scholarships. I'd saved enough to cover what the scholarships didn't. Grandpa offered to help with the rest, but I told him he'd already done enough. He insisted. We compromised. He'd help with dorm costs if I promised to visit during breaks. My parents found out about college through Facebook. Ashley had apparently been stalking my profile. My mom sent me a text. Congratulations on your college acceptance. We'd love to talk about this and help you plan. Too little, too late, Mom. I graduated high school with honors. Grandpa and Grandma came to the ceremony. They took me out to dinner after, and Grandpa gave me a card with $1,000 in it. Said he was proud of me. That was the first time I'd cried in probably 2 years. My parents didn't come to graduation. Ashley texted me the day before asking if she could come. I told her there weren't enough tickets. There were. I just didn't want her there. Summer before college, I worked full-time at Fletcher's. Saved every penny. Bought everything I'd need for my dorm. Helped Grandpa fix up the back deck as a thank you for everything. Those were probably the best 3 months of my life up to that point. Just working, hanging out with my grandparents, getting ready for the next chapter. Move-in day came in August. Grandpa and Grandma drove me to campus in Grandpa's truck. Helped me carry my stuff up 3 flights of stairs to my dorm room. Grandma fussed over how I arranged my desk. Grandpa helped me set up my mini fridge. When it was time for them to leave, Grandma hugged me for a solid minute. Grandpa shook my hand, then pulled me in for a brief hug and told me to make him proud. That first semester was rough academically, but I made it work. The classes were harder than high school. I struggled with calculus initially. Spent hours in the tutoring center. My study habits from high school helped, but I had to adapt them. I joined the business club and the accounting society. Made some friends. My roommate Jake was studying computer science. We got along fine. Sometimes we'd talk about life over midnight pizza. I told him my story. He said it sounded like a movie. First semester grades came back in December. I pulled a 3.2 GPA. Not amazing, but solid considering I was adjusting to college life while working part-time and being completely independent. Grandpa said he was proud of me. Winter break, I went back to Grandpa's house. My mom had texted asking if I was coming home for Christmas. I told her I already had plans. Christmas at Grandpa's was perfect. Small, quiet, actually enjoyable. Grandma made her famous ham. Grandpa and I watched football. They gave me practical gifts I actually needed. A good winter coat, new work boots, a gift card to the college bookstore. I gave them a framed photo from graduation. Grandma cried and put it on the mantle right away. Ashley texted me on Christmas Eve saying Mom was really hurt and I was being selfish. I blocked her number and went back to watching football. Spring semester, I got more involved on campus. Made friends with guys in the business program. My grades improved. Brought my GPA up to a 3.5 by the end of the semester. Made Dean's List for the first time. Sophomore year, I got an apartment off campus with Jake and 2 other guys. My share was $350 a month. That fall, I met Jenna in my business law class. She actually asked questions during lecture. Good questions. We ended up as partners on a group project, spent 3 weeks in the library working on it. I learned she was majoring in finance. She was smart, driven, had clear goals. We clicked. After we finished the project, we kept meeting up, started getting coffee, studied together. She told me about her family. Her parents had been married for 30 years and supported both their kids equally. It sounded like a different universe from my experience. I told her about my situation one night over pizza, expected her to think I was being dramatic. She didn't judge. She said it sounded like I'd made the right call and that my parents sounded toxic. She got it without me having to justify or explain myself. We started dating officially in December. She met Grandpa and Grandma over winter break. Grandma loved her immediately. Grandpa said, "She's good people. Don't mess it up." I met her parents over spring break. They were great, normal, functional. They asked me questions about school and my future and actually listened to my answers. Her dad and I talked about accounting for like an hour. Her mom showed me old photo albums and told embarrassing stories about Jenna as a kid. It was the kind of family dinner I'd imagined other people had, but never really experienced myself. That's when it really hit me. What I'd been missing. What normal family dynamics looked like. Jenna's parents didn't have a golden child. They didn't charge rent or play favorites. They supported both their kids equally and wanted them to succeed. It wasn't transactional. It was just love. Simple as that. Senior year, I got a job offer from the firm I'd been interning with. Good salary, benefits, room for advancement. I accepted immediately. Graduated in May, with honors and a 3.7 GPA. Grandpa and Grandma came to graduation. So did Jenna and her parents. We all went to dinner after, and Grandpa picked up the check. My parents didn't come to this graduation either. My mom sent a card with $50 in it. I donated the money to a homeless shelter and recycled the card. I started my job in June, found a decent apartment near the office. Jenna and I moved in together in August. Life was good. I had a career, a girlfriend I loved, my own place, financial stability. My parents reached out occasionally over the next year. My mom would send Facebook messages. My dad would text with awkward attempts at conversation. Ashley sent me a friend request that I ignored. I kept them all at arm's length. Then Grandpa got sick. It started small. Forgetting things. Getting confused. Grandma called me worried. The doctors said it was early onset dementia. I started visiting every weekend. Helped Grandma with whatever she needed. Took Grandpa to appointments. He'd forget my name sometimes, but he always remembered that I was important to him. My mom found out through social media. She called for the first time in over a year. Wanted to know why nobody told her. I said maybe if she'd been more involved she would have known sooner. She hung up. She showed up at the hospital when Grandpa was admitted. Brought my dad and Ashley. Grandma was polite but cold. I didn't say anything to them. My mom tried to talk to me in the hallway. Said we needed to put our differences aside for Grandpa's sake. I told her I didn't have any differences with Grandpa. He'd been there for me when they threw me in a basement and charged me rent. My differences were with her. She cried. I walked away. Grandpa passed 3 weeks later. Grandma was with him. So was I. It was quiet and sad and exactly right. The funeral was small. My parents came. They sat in the back. I sat in the front with Grandma and Jenna. During the service, I talked about how he'd saved me when I was 16, how he'd given me a home when I needed one, how he'd shown me what real family looked like, how he'd been more of a father to me in 4 years than my actual father had been in 16. After the funeral, my mom tried to approach me. I walked the other direction. The next few months were hard, helping Grandma adjust, sorting through Grandpa's things. Jenna was amazing through all of it. One Saturday, while cleaning out Grandpa's office, I found a folder with my name on it. Inside were copies of every report card, certificate, award I'd sent him, photos from my graduations. He'd kept it all. I cried for the first time since he died. Grandma found me there. Said Grandpa used to show that folder to anyone who'd listen, that he'd brag about his grandson who'd made something of himself. That made me cry harder. Life moved on. Jenna and I got engaged on our 3rd anniversary. Started planning a small wedding. Asked Grandma to walk me down the aisle since Grandpa couldn't. She said yes through tears. We set a date for the following spring. My mom found out about the engagement through social media. She called and asked why she had to hear about it from Facebook. I told her maybe if she'd been more involved, she would have known sooner. She asked if she was invited to the wedding. I said no. She hung up. The wedding was in April. Small ceremony, close friends, Jenna's family, Grandma. About 40 people total. Grandma walked me down the aisle. It was exactly what we wanted. My parents weren't there. The day before the wedding, my mom sent a long text about how hurt she was, how she was my mother and deserved to be there, how I was making a mistake cutting them out. I read it once and deleted it. Didn't respond. At the reception, Grandma gave a toast. Talked about how I'd shown up at her door at 16 with nothing but a backpack and determination. How Grandpa had been so proud of the man I'd become. How family wasn't about blood. It was about who showed up when you needed them. The room got pretty quiet. Half the people there knew my story. Jenna and I bought a house a year later. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, good neighborhood. Had Grandma over for dinner every Sunday. Sometimes Jenna's parents would join us. My mom texted once asking for my new address. I didn't reply. 2 years after the wedding, Jenna and I had our first kid. A boy. We named him after Grandpa. Grandma came to the hospital the day he was born. Held him and cried. Jenna's parents came that evening with balloons and flowers. My mom found out through a cousin's Facebook post 3 days later. She sent a text. I just found out I have a grandson. When can I meet him? I blocked her number. A week later, my parents showed up at our house unannounced. Just pulled into the driveway on a Saturday afternoon. I was in the front yard with the baby in a carrier. They got out of the car and my mom started walking toward me with this big smile like nothing had ever happened. I picked up my son and went inside. Locked the door. My dad knocked for 5 minutes. I didn't answer. Eventually, they left. My mom tried calling from different numbers. Left voicemails about grandparents' rights and how she deserved to know her grandson. I saved the voicemails in case I needed them later for a restraining order, but it never came to that. After a few weeks, the calls stopped. Ashley reached out a year later. Sent me a Facebook message saying she'd gotten her life together. Had a real job now. Been at the same company for 18 months. Was in a serious relationship with a guy who actually had his life together. Said she understood now why I'd left. That our parents had been wrong. That she was sorry for her part in it. I read the message twice. Thought about it for a few days. Then I responded. Told her I appreciated the apology. That I was glad she was doing better. That maybe someday we could talk. But I wasn't ready yet. She said she understood. We started texting occasionally after that. Nothing deep, just updates. She sent me a picture when she got promoted at work. I sent her one when my son took his first steps. It wasn't much, but it was something. She'd been 22 and stupid when the room thing happened. People change. Maybe she actually had. My parents tried one more time when my son was 3. Sent a letter through Ashley. Said they'd been going to counseling. That they understood now how badly they'd messed up. That they wanted a chance to make things right. That they wanted to meet their grandson. I read the letter. Showed it to Jenna. She said it was my call. I thought about it for a week. Then I wrote back. Told them I appreciated that they'd acknowledged their mistakes. But that some things couldn't be fixed. That I'd built a good life without them. And I was keeping it that way. That my son would grow up surrounded by people who actually showed up when it mattered. I never heard from them again after that. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.